people are from the States, you live in the U.S.? Okay. And pardon?
From Europe, now I live here.
You live here, okay.
We
just wanted to know a little bit.
Which part?
I'm not from here.
All right, so home stretch, right?
Home stretch.
Couple more, what, one more session after this? 2 more sessions? Think of this?
Two.
All right.
But who's counting?
That's right, who's counting? So who's going to celebration tonight? You're going to want to go. Yeah. We got some fun stuff planned for that one. So I bet most of you, but I'm thrilled to introduce my friends Denise and Beth. Came from my hometown of Bentonville, Arkansas. But they're going to take very much a global perspective. And some of you who may have sat in on Rachel's presentation from Mental yesterday, where we talked a lot about data. Bill Groves from Walmart talking about that. What's interesting is in our part of the world, and they're going to talk about this, is there's thousands or hundreds of consumer packaged goods companies ranging from Coca-Cola to Unilever to Kraft, because they're all there calling on Walmart. And so, Walmart typically represents about 30-35% of most major consumer packaged goods companies' volume. And so, what's amazing is, so they'll be very humble, but I'll brag on them to say, you will not find a major brand in any major store whose vendor team does not have their fingerprints all over it, as placing not only just analytical executives, but top talent. And so I've known both of them for 15 years. I don't want to take away much of their thunder. I'll let them tell you a little bit about their story in that. But thrilled to have you here. So thank you both for coming in and being a part of this.
Thank you so much. We are so excited that you're here today. And we were excited because we didn't think anybody would show up at this point. We really didn't. And so welcome. And we know it's been a lot as far as having a lot of information thrown at you. We want to make this fun, we want to make it interactive, we want to make it informative, and in some ways we can almost jump to the last slide, but we want to give you some perspective on why we're talking about what we are today. And so just to give you a little bit of background about us, Beth, why don't you tell them about yourself?
Yes, my name is Beth Pittman. I work at Cameron Smith & Associates, and I've been in recruiting for over 15 years. I was recruiting at Walmart corporate office, and I hired for all different types of positions, and then I've been with Cameron's group for almost 10 years this year, and I recruited C-level and board of directors positions.
Excellent. And I'm Denise Natishan. I've been with Cameron for almost 15 years. I don't know how that happens. I think I started when I was 10, but I'd like to think that anyway. But basically, I began my recruiting career up in Toronto. I worked with a woman who placed women at board, middle, and senior management level positions. So that was my foray into it. I was actually a teacher prior to that, so had no concept of business whatsoever. I was really looking to be a child psychologist. I ended up in recruiting and been with Cameron. And as Bill had said, we really do a lot with supplier teams, vendor teams, but we also have expanded our services. So we do quite a bit as far as other areas. We do coaching, we do outplacement, we do temporary placement, and we actually, both of us have been excited about being able to go to the C-suite level and onto board of directors, and specifically targeting diversity. So again, we wanted to talk to you a little bit about some of the root causes, like why are we talking about this today? And so we can, like I said, jump to the last slide and give you all our tips and tricks, and that's what we do. We recruit people. It's not about a matter of how to recruit women, how to recruit men, or anybody. That's the easy part. I like to use the example when I was in Toronto. We were tasked with being able to give to one firm, they wanted to bring in 20 women engineers. So we bring in all these phenomenal, wonderful women engineers. As they're coming in, they're going out the back door. And we're like, this is not good for us, this is not good for your company, we gotta stop. So we stopped the process, we did exit interviews with everyone, and found out that there was a problem as far as feeling welcome, feeling included, feeling like they belonged. So that's what we want to talk about a little bit today, is to understand why, so that you can go back with a solution that's not just a Band-Aid for yourself. So again, this is like a safe place, and there's no wrong answers here, and I know most of you are not from the US, but we want you to pretend you're maybe someplace in the US, because our pictures are from the US, but where do you think they might be? And just yell out if you think it's like...
Yeah, we're gonna show you some pictures, and then we're gonna try to guess where they're from. Anywhere.
The shop.
College campus.
Yeah, where do you think this is?
New York.
Coffee shop, okay.
Would it New York, or would you think it would be San Francisco?
New York, okay.
Okay. Where do you think it might be? Florida?
Florida.
Maybe
So it has to be
Florida?
Nebraska, Florida.
Where do you think this might be?
Arizona?
Arizona? That's a good guess.
New York.
New York definitely looks like that.
LA.
LA, doesn't it look like LA?
Right.
Now, would you be surprised to learn that this is all in Arkansas? This is where we live, and so people have a miscommunication or a misidea. When you think of Arkansas, and I don't know how many of you have ideas about Arkansas, and again, this is a very safe place. There's no wrong answers. Everything is acceptable. What do you think of when you hear somebody's from Arkansas? No, there's no offense, because I'll throw the first one out, hillbilly. I mean, I think of hillbillies,
Yes, something like that. Rural.
Yeah.
dial-up internet. I think of, you think of,
Fax machines are coming in or something.
well, you think of like, it's very conservative. You think of backwoods, you think of maybe outhouses. You don't think of it being a really sophisticated place. But in fact, Northwest Arkansas in particular is where the largest company in the world is.
Fortune 1.
Fortune 1, Walmart's there. We also have Tyson's, which is the largest protein company in the world. We also have J.B. Hunt, which is one of the largest trucking companies in the world. University of Arkansas is there. It's the place where the world comes to do business. What else do we have?
That one was a museum, Crystal Bridges. One of the best museums in the world is located right in our backyard, and it's free to the public. We also are really becoming known, Northwest Arkansas is for mountain biking. It's becoming very popular, and it's really gorgeous, gorgeous trails. So we're just saying that, sometimes stereotypes can affect you in so many different ways. And so if you had really thought, I'm not really sure about Arkansas.
You might have missed out on an opportunity, and we can just not put it on Arkansas. We can say, you already have some ideas. If you know somebody's from the U.S., you think somebody's from Canada, Mexico, China, you already have some ideas. Ireland, the Irish are gonna party pretty soon. So you have ideas of what people are like. And those are just what we call stereotypes or patterns. Everybody knows that. We're not gonna say, there's nothing bad about having a stereotype in your head. What we're trying to call out today is the awareness. It's a neuroscience. It was basically a way to be able to make shortcuts, to be able to figure out things quickly so that you can make quick decisions. So the cave woman needed to know, can I go out and is it safe today, or is that saber-toothed tiger gonna be my friend or my dinner, or how's that gonna work? So it's about awareness. That's really what we're gonna talk about, and a lot of this is how your unconscious bias is really affecting you in the workplace, and especially in some of the decisions that you're using and making as far as hiring practices.
Yeah, so this picture right here of Gina Davis, y'all mentioned all the celebrities were like OLA. Well, actually Bentonville has a film festival that focuses on women and diversity. And so every year it comes up in May, and all these celebrities flock to Northwest Arkansas.
That's Megan Ryan too. I used to love her. So we're talking about unconscious bias, and in a lot of ways California's come forward and they're making it a mandated opportunity for people, and we want to think of it as an opportunity, something that's good for you. So instead of thinking of it as a problem or a challenge, it's like eating ice cream for night instead of a kale chip, right? So it's something that's really good, and we all know that it's important because women are great in leadership positions.
Let's go back real quick. So one of the things that we want to talk about in terms of unconscious bias is not necessarily, you probably think that's not me or that's not somebody else. Kristen Pressner is the global head of HR for Roche. She's, I think, in Germany. Anyways, she said I could share the story. She's done a TED Talk on it. As the global HR person, she really prides herself, as most HR professionals do, is not having this unconscious bias. And she had 2 employees come to her in 1 week and ask about their compensation, a woman and a man. And to the woman, she said, you're good. And to the man, she said, I'll look at that for you. And she said during the week, she was working on some unconscious bias training, and it hit her, oh wow, maybe I'm being unconscious bias. Maybe our 4 children. And she said, here I was being a champion of women and promoting women, and then at the end of the day, I'm still have these unconscious bias continue to creep in. And so she had to go back and relook at that. So, I mean, it affects everybody. Even when you think you're not doing that, you're still doing it. But why women in leadership is important, women are really great for business. Studies show that women, if you have more diversity, you have higher investment, higher returns on investment. Companies with more women in leadership roles tend to have higher returns on capitals. Companies with more female board directors perform significantly higher financially.
So,
In the workforce.
go ahead.
Yeah, so 47% of the total labor force is women. And 80% of all purchasing decisions are made by women. That's a lot. Who loves
That's huge.
purchase? I mean, that is a lot. So when you're doing that, when you're looking at those numbers, it's really important to make sure that if you're, especially if your company is a product company, that you have a diverse thought, diverse products. You're going to have women on making those decisions because a lot of times they're the consumer as well.
Right, and the thing that's so striking about it is that if women are making up almost half of the workforce and almost 80% of the hiring or purchasing decisions, and yet we're only 21% on board seats, 5% CEOs, like that is such an inequity as far as what's taking place in terms of diversity of thought. And we talk about this as far as one of the things that's really important is that young women coming into the workforce need to have a role model. I've been to several network of executive women conferences, and there was a group of Pepsi women that were there, and we were talking about leadership. They were so excited because they had somebody that they could aspire to, that they said, I can reach that, I can be that. If you don't see somebody there like you, if you don't feel it, it really holds you back. And we don't realize a lot of that is affecting people as it goes on. Go ahead.
So I don't know if I
Yeah,
can I just ask a question?
yes, ma'am.
So just to clarify, so board here in the US is the non-executive board, like is the C-suite or is the
No, that's board of directors.
board of directors?
In the
Okay.
US.
Okay.
Yeah, a lot of other countries are doing mandated women on board of directors,
Yeah.
and they are benefiting from it. So from a global perspective, it is working in other countries.
Okay.
And we all know that women are great for business. Go ahead, continue, just tell them.
Yeah, businesses are 158% more likely to understand their target consumers when they have at least one member who represents their customers on gender, races, age, sexual orientations, and all that. I have a client that they're a marketing company, and they've made the decision that when they do commercials for their clients, that the commercial team is going to have more than one woman on it, because a lot of times they have a man on it. I mean, it's a whole men-centric cars or something like that, but they're like, women are they're driving the cars as well, and so what do they need? So they're going to put a woman on that group. Let's see. More women equals more trust and more engagement. There's lower levels of employee turnover. There's increased job satisfaction and knowledge sharing, and there's a reduction in all occurrences of all workplace harassment. And companies in the top 25% for diversity have been achieving above average profitability. So there is a correlation there. We don't really know what the causation is, but you know that there's a correlation there. So 38% of all management positions are held by women, and 62% of them are held by men.
A little bit of an inequity.
And then on the Fortune 500, only 5% of those CEOs are women. That's a lot, right?
That's a lot.
That's
So
a
what
lot.
we want to do is, again, give you a little bit of a perspective, because to me, this is what was very surprising as I did all of our research. And we actually interviewed and talked to women in our area and sent out surveys to a lot of them to be able to talk through some of the challenges before we even faced it, before we presented. So we did send out a survey, but we did this work in terms of learning about women in history. And this was like absolutely shocking to me, as far as it was the 70s before we can do so many things. It wasn't, and so when you get a perspective of the time frame that prior to all of this, there was this understanding of women being at home and in the workplace. It's in the 70s, actually, when it started to change. Like, we couldn't even run in a marathon.
This is 1967 here. That's Kristen Schweitzer. I have a lot of Kristens in this presentation, but Kristen Schweitzer, she's running a marathon. 1967. She registered under her initials, and that's a race official trying to push her off the track. So she finished in like 4 hours and 20 minutes or something. But women were not allowed to run in a marathon until 1972.
And we couldn't get credit. We couldn't do a lot of things. So this is just to give you a little bit of a span of how far we've come and yet not come. So go ahead, Beth.
Yeah, in 1972, Catherine Graham was the first woman to become the CEO of Fortune 500 company, the Washington Post. 1974, the Equal Credit Opportunity passes, which required someone who's single, widowed, divorced to have a cosign on a credit application. So you couldn't even get a credit card without a cosigner if you were not married.
So you
And I would like to add to that, because it's not just an American problem. In Switzerland, women were not allowed even into the late 70s.
really?
Yes.
Wow. We were talking about this too because one of the things, one of my new heroes has been RBG, so Ruth Bader Ginsburg, and I'm not sure how many of you have followed her or know much about her, but when she was in school, she graduated from college and graduates from Columbia as a lawyer, cannot get a job because she's a female. This was back in the 60s. And so then she gets a job at Rutgers University as in a teaching role. They ask her to take a lesser salary than the male equivalent because she has a husband that can provide for her. So and that was the 60s. So, and that's why we say we think we've come a long way, baby, but we certainly haven't. But it's because of the historical subconscious bias that women are supposed to be home taking care of the kids.
Yeah, because in the 1950s and 60s, 40s and 50s, when men went off to war, a lot of times those women would have to take those positions in the factories. When men were coming back from the war, they were like, where's our jobs? The women have them. So what they were wanting to do is put the women in those secretary positions, or, you stay at home and take care of the kids, and I'm going to provide for the family. If you're taking a factory job, you're taken away from your own family. And so it was really kind of a mindset and how the culture is trying to switch and change to really kind of grow that. And we talk about Ruth Bader Ginsburg. In 1960, she had a college professor recommend her to the Supreme Court as to be a law clerk. And the Supreme Court said, or one justice said, you know what? No, I'm not interested in her. She's a female. I'm not looking for a female. And then for the Pregnancy Act, she was demoted because she was pregnant. We had another friend say, back then, you didn't tell people that you were pregnant because they would fire you. And so it wasn't until 1978 that they outlawed that. 1993, the Family and Medical Leave Act requires employers to provide employees with job-protected and unpaid leave for qualified medical and family reasons. If you had a sick parent and you needed to take time off to care for them, a lot of times that was not allowed. Or you could go and do it, but you wouldn't come back to your position. So those things have really fairly recently been put into place so that you have job protection.
And it was actually interesting too because for men it's different. When they have a child, it's almost that they're going to be more responsible because they now have a family that they have to take care of. For women, it's almost that now it's a hindrance. Now you're not going to work as hard. Now you're going to take more time off. Now you won't travel as much. All these stigmas that come with women as a result of being pregnant or having a family, it increases. And in fact, the interesting thing, when we did this survey for the women that we sent out in our area, and they're all top VPs of different companies, they said that they didn't realize the inequities until they became mothers. And that was a really shocking time for them. And so part of this is what we really want to say is it's all about fairness, and it's about what can we do for our children, what can we do for our daughters, our granddaughters, our mothers, our wives, to make it a little bit better. Did you want to talk about the 2009?
2009 Lilly Ledbetter Fair Pay Restoration Act allows victims of pay discrimination to file a complaint with the government against their employees. In the United States, women are still 80 cents to a man's dollar. So we're still coming along, but it's going to take a little while to get there.
That was just like 20 years ago, and we were just getting it. So again, we keep thinking that we've come a long way, and we have, but I think this is worth 1,000 words. We always say a picture's worth 1,000 words. This was just this past year. they announced their new partners, and they were so excited to see these partners and to see the, and then the press came out and just really nailed it. Paul Weiss is one of the top legal firms in the United States, and so for them, you can see that there was one diversity, one woman on the board and no diversity. And so as you read through the whole article about it, they do better than a lot of the other companies, but at the same time, if you talk to the people that are in there, they feel like they're not included. And that's part of what we were talking about too, is this whole idea of not being included or not feeling like you're part of something, that creates a social pain. You're feeling exactly the same kind of problems that you would if you had broken a leg or if you had cancer or something like that, and your brain lights up in the same way with social pain of feeling excluded or not feeling wanted or not feeling included, and that's what's been going along in this law firm, and they're working with it, of course. But
yeah, still today, women are still facing, they get less support from their managers, they have less access to senior leadership and mentorship, and they're still getting sexually harassed on a day-to-day basis. And a lot of people do not realize that. That is still happening. So, we have, the United States is getting it for political season, and we have a lot of females in the race this year, or coming up. But they're getting asked all the time.
how do you manage work-life balance? That's the one question that they're being asked, which I found that shocking. Like, you don't ask one of the men, how do you manage your work-life balance? But yet the women candidates are being asked that very question. It's just shocking. And I'm sure Beth, having a family, she gets asked all the time, do you have mommy guilt for working? But we don't hear people saying, do you have daddy guilt? Because you're expected to be the breadwinner of the family. So it's, again, that unconscious bias that's still there, that we haven't come to an equal place of being able to see what women can do within their workplace. And so it's really not up to women alone to fix the gender inequality. And we wanted to include this because we knew a lot of you might be working in venture capitals, but it's still, today, women are not being represented in venture capital. They're not even getting to have, to choose another woman with them. And so that becomes a little bit of a challenge. So we hope that that can change. But if you want to have change, it's going to be up to the companies. If they want to have a better board, they need to figure out how to build a better table. That's what we came up with, and think that's really important as far as how we can do it. So we could have flipped all the way down here to the end. How do you recruit and inspire women?
And you could actually even change that from women and just say, how do you recruit and inspire people, really? But we're really focused on women. So it starts at the board of directors level. We heard that in the last talk with Dying to Get a Paycheck. He said, if the board of directors had said this, and that's the same thing, if the board of directors had come and said, we want to make this an initiative, and you're going to start with me, we're going to start with us. And so if they have more women on the board with them, and not just one woman.
No, it can't be the only, because when you are an only, you stand out, and then you're afraid to say something because then you're being judged not so much for what you said, you're being judged because you're a female or you're a male. And so the more that you have at least 3 people, then that whole bias is taken out. So you can't have the only. The pressure of being the only is so significant and causes many women to leave.
Yeah, so from a board of directors standpoint, if you set it like a business priority, if you tie compensation, if you look at what that looks like for your company, if you're making those initiatives and you're pushing them down, that will go better. At the C-suite, reverse mentorships, where you mentorship an entry-level person, and you're not teaching them necessarily a lot of things, but they're teaching you of what's going on in a day-to-day basis. So that reverse mentorship is really effective. Also, the gender-neutral hiring practices, this is so simple, from a standpoint of taking the names off resumes and really making them consistent. And we really point back to the example of the blind auditions. I mean, we've probably all seen The Voice on TV. The Boston Symphony had started this years ago, where they were trying to get more women into their program, and it was just mainly men. And so what they did was they decided to audition people behind a curtain. And so they're like, that's gonna get more women. And the numbers were the same. So then they asked the people that were trying out to please take off their shoes. And once that happened, it became 50-50.
So that was to me really fascinating, the parody, because you could actually hear high heels walking.
You could tell the gate.
And so they could tell the gait of a woman versus a man. So it wasn't until they had their shoes off that they were able to actually bring parity. And that's like a proven, that's just something that happened. And so again, having blind resumes, if you take the names off and look at what is going on, because what we're also finding is that women are often judged on what they have done, where men are judged on their potential, which is very fascinating, but it's the truth of what.
So also we have a client that said he just started a new company and the CEO just changed over. And so he said, we've got these great diversity initiatives. We have a chief diversity officer, which is at that C level as well, and he's pushing down all these programs. It's great. But then the chief diversity officer said, I'm leaving the company. And the CEO said, you know what, I'm just going to take his role and roll it up underneath me. We don't need to hire another chief diversity officer. What does that say to your people? What does that say? It says diversity is not important. If it's not important enough for me to hire another chief diversity officer, I'm just going to take it on. And we're seeing that trend. People think they're doing okay, and so the numbers are down for people thinking, well, we've done this, so we're good. But it's not just one and done. It's a continual process. From an HR standpoint, obviously making sure you have diverse a candidate pool, that's very important. We see that a lot.
And that's easy to achieve. All you
Yes.
have to do is request it. But that's about looking in unexpected places possibly too, because you're not maybe looking at the right people and considering different opportunities. So there's ways that they can do that, and especially looking at bringing in college interns too, and starting it from the very beginning so that you have a pool of candidates that you're going to be able to nurture and bring up within your organization.
As a hiring manager, because maybe you're not in HR, maybe you have people bring to you, but you should take responsibility to look across your team to ensure that, one, you're giving female stretch projects. This happened 2 weeks ago now. I have a chief financial officer position open. I talked to a woman who has some great credentials. She's so great. And she said, I don't know if I'm really qualified for that role. And then I talked to a man right after that for the same position. She said, sign me up. I'm ready to go. And
We
he
see
said,
that all the
she was
time.
more qualified than he was. But we have real life experiences that we see that literally every day. So if you're a hiring manager, be given those stretch projects to females. Yes, sir.
I'm curious to understand what is the background for this? Like why women are feeling unqualified even with 80% meeting the qualification and men feel more qualified with 50%?
Well, we don't have enough time to do that. Because, as women, we know that. We are not going to sell ourselves over. We're just not. We want to perform, and I'm sure there's some research back there that will, and any one of the women here could answer that.
It's
But
yeah. Go ahead. Sorry.
I'm just gonna say from a personal standpoint, I have a son and a daughter, and my daughter is so smart, she's so great, and my son is smart and great too. But he is like, yeah, I can do it, and my daughter's like, well, I don't know. And I'm like, y'all are basically the same human. But I have to constantly build that confidence in her, and I've been doing that since she could walk. I'm constantly pouring into her. Whereas him, oh no. He's like most valuable player in everything he does. He's, and I'm like, I gotta squelch that down. I'm like, a woman can do that stuff too. So I don't know. We don't know what that looks like.
Well, I think it is cultural. It goes way back. It's our training. We're taught to be nice. Girls are supposed to play nice, be fair. You're not supposed to speak up. And it's that whole idea of not being the bee. You don't want to be the bitch in the room. And so, there's a whole thing about women in work that we're not willing to raise our hands as quickly because we don't want to be drawing too much attention, especially if you're the only one and you're not really as qualified. It's so culture, and I was reading, and I highly recommend it. Mika Brzezinski writes a book, Know Your Value, and in reading it, the thing that was very inspiring, or not inspiring, I think it gave me great comfort. It doesn't matter if it's someone that's in business, it doesn't matter if it's a CEO of a company, a woman, I'm talking about all women, they talk about, or a politician, all these women talk about the insecurities that they've felt and how they have not felt as confident to either ask for raises, ask for promotions. It's just something that's innate in us, and a lot of it goes down to being nice, and it's unfortunate, but it's there.
And a couple of things with that. Women don't necessarily want to be seen as the B word. They don't really want to change how they're working because it's working for them. And I don't think you should. I don't think they should be seen as super aggressive or whatever. I think how you project yourself is the way you should be. But women are asking for more raises than ever before. Women earn more degrees than men.
Yes.
Women are asking for a promotion. So we are seeing, and they're negotiating salaries. I cannot tell you how many times I counsel people on negotiating salaries. That is a whole, I never have counseled a man. Never.
No, that's
Can I
true.
just share an experience?
Sure,
there?
sure,
I
go.
just got a 45% salary increase and $100,000 compensation for the past year from my company because I was able to prove, through the systems that we actually have, that I was outside my grade, that I was being
Good
paid
for you.
less than men that had like 2 grades lower than me. So it wasn't even like a legal discussion. It was more like, okay, no, we
These are the facts.
really messed it up. So there you go. From now on, our salary is up 45%, and we're going to compensate you for the money that you lost between your last
Excellent.
promotion and
Wow,
and
that's
you
a
have
lot.
to ask.
You have to ask.
have to ask.
Yeah, give her a hand. That is excellent.
And
We
you
need
will
those
feel-
stories.
Yes, and you will feel confident doing that again.
Absolutely.
Because you've done it once and you were able to succeed. A woman will be able to do
And I
that.
had people in HR, coming to me and say, I'm so inspired by what you have done. I'm now looking into my own salary.
Yes,
right,
and demanding from my CHRO
right.
the same equal treatment that you got, basically.
Yes.
We're
So,
going to encourage you,
I'm
all
starting a
women to
movement.
really.
Start the movement. Yes, ma'am. Do that.
One of the other things that HR professionals, I heard about one company that is actually putting a program together for women who want to leave the workforce, have a family, or need to take care of somebody, and they have a special program so that you can come back. You don't have to re-interview, you don't lose your status within the organization, but you might have some skills gaps. So they have a training program that's put into place in order to be able to bring you back into the fold. And I think that's, again, a company that's being really innovative and looking forward to how can we make this different? How can we make it successful for everybody? And we're going to talk to you about, like, women need to help each other.
Yeah, it's a good segue in talking about women. First off, you have to be able to work hard and do your job. So, I mean, you just can't expect this because you're a woman. You have to come out and prove it. We had a client who said, back when I first started with my company, I was entry level, and we started these resource groups because there wasn't one. We called it coffee time. And she said, I found other women who was looking around that was just like me, and we got together and did coffee time. And over the course of 15 years, she has moved up the ladder. She's a senior VP now, and all these people have gone different places. And she said, we still do once a month coffee time, but it's over the phone on the way into work. And she said, we talk about dealing with some of the issues that we're facing. What a great leadership group that you can continue to move that forward. Always, don't be a note taker. We actually have the pleasure of working with some of the best executives in the world because of our experience with Walmart. And so one of the ladies was the first EVP at Walmart, female EVP at Walmart, and she had written a book, and she said, don't be a note taker. When you're in the room and you're the only one that's sitting at the table that's female, don't just assume that you're taking the notes because you're not. Also have something to say every time you come into the room. And the one that I love that I have used time and time again is get an ally. So if I've got a project I've got to sell or an idea, I go around to the people that are going to be in the meeting ahead of time, and I sell that idea to them one-on-one. So that when I go into the meeting, they've already heard it, but they're going to support me more, have more ideas.
And it goes with it, leaning up, and that is something I've listened to Sheryl Sandberg, and of course she's done her famous book about leaning in, but she's also done another book because she's talked about after the fact, after she lost her husband, she never realized how good she had it because she had a support person. And if you're a single mom or you're a single woman trying to make everything on your own and balance it all, she said, my hat's off to you because you don't have any extra energy at the end of the day. And so many of our households are single family households, not with dual situations. So there's a sensitivity that we need to have for women that might be in those kinds of situations.
What does lean up mean? Like what?
Lean up into the lean up and get in to, like, not just lean in, but lean up and get allies within the organization, lean up and have people that are gonna support you, sponsors, mentors, go after, like, try and build a camaraderie within your organization.
The last group that we're going to talk about is our favorite subject, men.
We love you.
We love you. Y'all don't, because you're here in this room, you definitely want to make it better. And some of the programs that we're talking about, flexible work schedules, everybody asks for a flexible work schedule these days. And if you can give it to a woman, then give it to a man. Give it to everybody. Why not let everybody participate in these programs? If you have a paternity program, make it as long as the female one. We're not saying this is only for women. We're saying men and women alike. Let's look at everything. So, but as a man, you can become a champion of women and diversity. You can actually go to bat for them, pull them along on your team, encourage them to take on projects. You can become a champion of women.
And don't be afraid to ask. I think that's one of the biggest things, and I wanted this to be a circle of trust where you could ask anything that you want, because there's going to be awkward situations. How do I refer to you? Like, do I call you, especially if it were looking at gay, lesbian, like, what word do I use? If I'm going to call you, do I call you African American? Do I call you black? What do I call you? Like, so don't be afraid to be able to ask a question that's uncomfortable. If you're really coming from your heart place of wanting to make a difference and wanting to understand and really get into somebody else's place, you will be understood. Like, it will be a good thing. And I think I just saw the Green Book on the way out here. That is just a perfect example of, once you walk in somebody's shoes, once you see what it's like, when it becomes personal, then you can make a difference. And so I think that, for men, it's especially about really understanding, how do you want it to be for your wives, for your children, for your grandchildren, and for your mothers. So.
And I definitely think from a man's perspective, I mean, I can think back in my own career, who has been a champion of women, and people get to know that and they respect that, and then they share that with others. So it's definitely a good thing to have.
And so, really, in conclusion, this is it. I mean, it's not rocket science what we're saying. We could find women for you all day long. We could find diverse candidates, but it's about creating an inclusive work environment. And creating an inclusive work environment really is about just practicing the golden rule. So treat people how you want to be treated. Be willing to listen. And
it's okay to make a mistake. You're gonna have some missteps. You just need to redirect.
Right, and realize that you probably do have some unconscious bias. We all do. We don't even realize we have it, which is why it's an unconscious bias. So take a step back when you start to react. I think the biggest thing is, if you feel the hairs on your neck going up, or you feel like, then take a deep breath. Like, what is that for me? Why am I reacting? And we say that for everybody, men and women. It doesn't matter. To really just be mindful of each other, and you can create a really exciting workforce. But it does come from the top. Right? And that's one of the things that we said. And if you find yourself, this is our little plug here too, if you find yourself in a situation, because it's going to be a company that's going to be willing to invest in you, if you don't find that kind of support, you need to look for places that will, because there are companies out there are good organizations that are really championing women, championing diversity, and really wanting to make a difference, because it makes good business sense. Your company is going to be better, it's going to be more profitable. And those are the kind of places where you want to hang your hat.
The last page. We have one more slide. So right here at the bottom, we actually have a landing page on our website that's geared for you. So you can see the studies that we've used, and then a little bit of. We also have some tips and techniques, and we can share that with you. We have some handouts that we can give you on your way out, or just some other things, because we have not hit on all of them. We've just kind of touched on it. Are there any questions we can ask? Yes. Yes.
I was going to ask, just to touch on what you said about working for companies that support these initiatives. What do you think are some good questions, maybe like in particular as a woman, to ask in an interview, to ask about how they support all of these values?
That's a good question. I think that what you would want to do is, first of all, ask what kind of diversity initiatives do they have, but what is the ratio too? Like, how many women leaders are in the organization? What does your board of directors, I mean, you can find the board of directors yourself, but you're going to want to like look into that a little bit as far as what's the culture. Ask specific questions. How would you describe your culture? Ask questions about.
You could talk about resource groups. You could ask what kind of resource groups you have available. You could also, who are you interviewing with? Is it all white men?
Right.
I mean, really looking at, I mean, are they bringing you a diverse panel of people so that you can get diverse ideas and you can find out about the company?
I think if you see you're just interviewing with one stereotype of a person, then you kind of already have a clue of what you're going to walk into. So I just had a friend that left an organization, and I had warned her before she left that I thought it was still a pretty much male-dominated organization. And she said she felt like she kind of saw the signs later, but it was too late. She had already taken the job. But there's a lot of questions that you can ask as far as just policies and procedures. What kind of flex time do they have? Because that will say a lot. What kind of maternity leave, paternity leave? What are their benefits? Because I think the benefit package really says a lot about how progressive a company is.
I'm sorry, what question did you have?
Thank you for sharing all this data. So I by myself have gone through a lot of kind of experiences, and I assume many other women here as well. And from your numbers, and we all know that it's very clear that most of the companies have mainly men in top leadership positions, and where the positions are taken, we see here that at the end it's mainly women sitting here listening to this, the things that we know already.
Right.
So
That you've
those that need
experienced
to
too.
make the change are, in my opinion, also men,
Right.
because they are in those positions. So my question to you, do you have any case of a company where, which was maybe more male dominated, where some profound changes have happened towards being more inclusive?
That's a good question.
It is a great question. I'm trying to think. You know, we've looked at a couple of different industries. Well, anybody in the tech industry. So, you know, you talked about your Canadian company putting in engineers, which is a male-dominated field. And so what we saw was they wanted to up their numbers for women, but then they weren't successful. They were leaving. And so when we went to go find out why they were leaving, it was simply because the men were not receptive to that. So understanding kind of what that looks like. Tech is kind of the same way. So you're already down, you know, it's already a man-dominated field. A lot of women are, of course, trying to do STEM and all these different things. So really understanding kind of what that looks like from a woman's perspective. We get to look at a lot of different things. Do we have one in particular? I don't know.
I think we do, but that's a great question. I'm going to do some research on
Yes,
that.
it's a great question.
It's a really
But just to add on, if you're in a male-dominated industry or company, starting these resource groups and putting on lunches and I always tell people, as a woman, you should be joining organizations that are going to pour into you. Is that women in networking? Is that, you know, whatever that looks like. Pour in, get those organizations that maybe your company is not investing in you, but you figure out which ones you can afford and you go and do that. And then you bring that knowledge back to your team. You bring that knowledge back to your company. You set up an informal lunch, you invite one of the speakers, you invite those women and men. You start the conversation yourself.
Right. It's about starting the conversation, and I think a lot of it would be individual conversations too. So you get the allies and you get the people that are going to buy in, and that can make a difference. So.
Yeah. I used to lead a diversity inclusion function in a large Australian organisation of about 35,000 people. Over about 5 or 6 years, we saw a significant shift in the number of women in leadership, and that was a whole bunch of things. Like, but honestly, I'd say the root cause was the CEO making a stand.
Yes.
We want, and basically said it to his exec general managers, his direct reports. I expect you all to have much better gender balance in your teams. That became, you know, we had programs for women, we had mentoring things, we had a whole bunch of things, but that was really important. But I'd say where we were heading, I left in December, is we were starting to work towards much more of an inclusion strategy, because the data was starting to tell us that women were actually probably more engaged than men, but they did feel less belonging than men.
Right.
Yes.
That's part of it.
But what we found, really interestingly, is our LGBTIQ community and people with disability were far less.
Yes.
Oh, we didn't even touch on
No,
that.
exactly.
Because
Yes.
we didn't even talk
Yes.
as far
It's
as.
not even a blip on the.
No,
I mean, because women are way up above, like if we had to do the, you know,
In the scale.
on the
we
scale.
design thinking and ran workshops and sessions, and we found there was a lot of commonalities in what people wanted, and what we were starting to work towards are what are the common needs of everyone. So
Yes,
we can include
everyone.
And it
Yes.
was things like flexibility, it was about how the work environment is set up, all of those factors.
Yes.
Work environment.
That's
Last
what-
one.
yeah.
Because Bill's gonna cut me out and get more.
Thank you so much. I work with Tori Work Peace Foundation, which empowers women, and I'm quite well versed on this topic. However, I'd love to hear your input on the best approach for board leadership with women. There's obviously the board list and all these great organizations, but in my opinion, there's not a pipeline issue. There's just an opportunity, a very transparent opportunity issue, and there's so many brilliant women here that should be on board,
Oh.
and none of us know how to do that. So can you talk about that?
That is a great question. Yeah, there's not a shortage. A lot of
That is not
times
a
this
shortage.
happens, a shoulder tap, you know, and so they want their board to look just like them. So the start of California has enacted that at least one female be on the board by the end of the year, and we think it needs to be at least 3 a week. And that's, I feel like that's low. I mean, RBG said there won't be enough women until there's 9 on the Supreme Court. So I definitely think, one, getting yourself geared up and trying to plug into those organizations. You went to the training.
Kellogg's training.
Yes.
Kellogg's
So
management
I
training.
think that's also good. Connecting with some of those people that do those things, that recruit at that level and understanding. But it's really trying to get companies to really look at their business model, and that's sometimes hard to do.
I think it's exposure to senior management and to leadership and being able to have male partners that are going to be your champions to get you forward. And so it's not a magical answer. I think, unfortunately, it's going to not be until it's mandated more because and it's going to take 100 years for us to bring up to parity what we need to have happen, really, if we keep at the same rate. So it really has probably to be mandated, and people don't want to hear that because it sounds horrible, but it's the only way that we're going to make some of the significant changes.
For a publicly held company, though, it does make sense. I always tell people if you're looking to get on boards, then start with a nonprofit, start with the public or private companies, and try to really get your bearings kind of there first and continue to move forward out.
We really appreciate
Can I add a small note?
Go ahead.
So to Simeon's question, I recommend everybody here to read the book The Male Brain from Luan Brizendale.
Okay.
I don't know if you know it. She's a researcher.
What book
And-
is it?
The Male Brain.
The Male Brain. She has published also The Female Brain, but then The Male Brain sums it all up. So it's a really interesting reading because it really opens an understanding about how different the female brain from the male brain is,
That's part of
and
all
how
of
the
this.
hormones of men and women and the release of hormones influences those behaviors that you ask for why.
Right, why is it like
This
that?
gives a lot of answers in relationships towards your kids. It
Everything.
It really helps to understand things that they
Thank you.
are as they are.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you
Thank
so
you
much.
all so much. Thank you for coming. We really appreciate it.
Website, you just noticed it's csarecruiters.com/me2week.
Go back.
Well, but it says different.
Okay.
We'll have your web person change it to maybe, but it's me to week instead of Stanford. All the
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
You just check. Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.